right, good morning, everyone. My name is Vanoeveren, and I am the coordinator of the research group CREATIE at the Royal Conservatoire in Antwerp. Today, I will share with you some of our experiments and search and exploration for methodologies about dealing with this pandemic and suddenly being at home and having to find ways to co-create together in a digital and virtual way. I will share my screen. Um, while doing so, I can already tell you that I will try my best to make up some of the time. Here we go. Can someone let me know if this is okay for everyone? Can you see it? Just a scream because I don't see anyone in.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, we do.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Let's just dig in. I just want to mention that I will show some experiments of Creatie, but also from the research group MaxLab, from the Royal Academy, the place where you all will go tomorrow. And we experimented all together, or we're thinking about new methodologies or appropriate methodologies now about digital art in a virtual world. So first of all, I made some of these methodologies into some sort of a framework. And the first thing that I want to talk about is meditation on Zoom. Can also be Teams, of course. And what did we do? A few exercises, and actually they can be seen more as some sort of a warm-up to still feeling connected with each other. We have this screen suddenly in front of us. In normal performances, we talk about this fourth wall, which is an invisible wall between us on stage, artists on stage, and our audience. But now that wall was very apparent suddenly. We had this screen, which is really, really, really there. So we tried some different things to deal with that, to cope with that. And what I want to share you now, this is a piece. This is a piece written in lockdown. Everything that you will see today in my presentation, maybe very briefly, but everything is written during the last 12 months. So everything is some sort of a lockdown piece. This piece is written by Erik Tielemans. And he wanted to experiment with this with some researchers over Zoom. We met each week during the first lockdown online. And this is some sort of a meditation based on principles actually of deep listening by Pauline Oliveros. I will get to that a little later. This was a meditation in your room, sitting in your room, which was very much the case for everyone, but really listening. What is your room not telling you? Meaning, do you really hear all the sounds? Do you hear birds? Do you hear the rain ticking against the window? Do you hear cars, or do you hear people screaming? Do you hear your neighbors when you're locked up in an apartment? All these things, embracing it and really, really soaking it in. I was very skeptical at the beginning because I'm not really a meditation person, but I had to say it really gave connection with the other people on screen. So we were all doing the same thing while Teams was open. And then after 45 minutes, we had to improvise, but by shutting down our mics. So we knew who was there. We saw them, we felt kind of a connection, but we couldn't hear them, which is really weird for musicians trying to improvise together. But I will share a very, very small excerpt of what came out. And I have to say it was one of the more fruitful collaborations that I had this year, actually. I do apologize for the very weird sounds in the morning, but here we go. just a very small excerpt, but what was really striking to me was that we were really in connection with each other without hearing each other, without actually seeing each other, because some people were just in corners of their room. We had a similar pace, a similar narrative, a similar structure. So what you heard here, there is no post-production. It's just we were with 4 people, the 4 voices on top of each other. We never played with each other before. Some of them never met, and there was no post-production. This just came out. So I can only recommend this upwarming tool when you're having a residency or working with people you cannot really connect with them in real life. Well, this might be something. Another example that I would like to show is, again, deep listening, from Pauline Oliveris this time, so the real stuff. And this is an exercise we did with CREATIE, part of a lecture of Jeffa Fels, and it's called We Could. So one person starts with the sentence, we could, and you just come up with whatever you want. It can be very, superficial or from daily life. We could be sitting at the beach right now. And then another person follows up with, we could be sitting at the beach right now, but I prefer to go to the mountains. So, this is not very deep. But in a way, Umut was there as well. So he might remember we got into some more deep concepts about listening to music and improvising by just doing this exercise beforehand. And again, as a preparation of an improvisation session together afterwards. So if you want to collaborate with other people online, you might be interested in going into these exercises as a warm-up beforehand. Okay. Next topic, graphic improvisation. We tried to improvise all together. With a screen, it's not always that helpful. What do you do with scores? How do you connect? Because it's not, it was not the purpose of first practicing for hours and then coming together and make something very, very clear. We wanted to play together, to create together. This is a score, spinning scores, again by Jeffa. I'll play them in the meantime. There is no sound with this one. And these were the scores that we were following. So all the boxes say something. You follow the direction of the boxes, but you also follow the graphics that are being painted on it. The middle part, for example, is really clear. It's a mouth opening and closing. So what do you do with that? How do you hum? How do you sing? How do you speak? How do you play? How do you perform with that? And it was very liberating to go on with this concept. She made different pieces with this kind of idea. And this is a collaboration between Jeffa and Marcelo Flores Loscano that came out of it. The principle is, so everything is painted with her, so it's very analog and then made digital. And when it goes into one direction, you think ahead. What will you do different in the future? How will you handle it? What is your approach? When it spins back, you think about what you just did. Like, what did I actually do? What was I performing? What was I thinking? How was I communicating? And then you have this moment in between where the object is actually standing still, and that's a present. And then you make sound. I will just share a small part of it so that you get the concept. This is a part with talking.
It's kind of interesting what's happening here, because I did several takes of part one. I mean, some of them were with the guitar, some of them were with body noises, and that was the one where I'm talking. And since this piece is about connecting with emotions, in a way I feel like it's really important to I'm not really sure what would happen if I were to do this again. It depends on the state of mind, I guess.
So this is kind of the concept. You get it. It's the longer piece. Please look it up online if you're interested. It's on Vimeo. All these different sphere pieces by Jeffa Fels. We're gonna stay a little bit with this audiovisual concept, of course. And because of the screens. And one thing that was very clear for me from the beginning is you don't know who your audience is anymore. When we play live somewhere in a concert hall, your audience is being determined by the scene, by the sort of festival that you're playing, by the location, by the concert hall, by the ticketing pricing. So they're all different aspects that determine your audience. But now everything is online. Everyone, between brackets, can access. So you don't know who your audience is anymore. So there can be people with physical disabilities jumping in and also wanting a similar experience that fully abled people are getting from these performances. Accessible performances is an important topic within the research group CREATIE, so this is also something that we developed or explored further. During summer, when there was a semi-lockdown, when I think about it now, it was heaven during that time, but hey. And I gave some sort of, I gave a workshop during the summer course of Labo from Champ d'Action on this principle. What are you communicating? Are you communicating a similar message, a similar narrative through visuals and through audio? So I gave this exercise to the participants, a collaboration between a visual artist and a musician, composer or performer or both. And the visual artist had to listen to 1 minute of music of the performer-composer. Not really difficult to find these days, all online. Then a visual artist had to make a translation. I don't like to use the word translation of it, but I'm still not finding a right concept for it. But they had to translate what they were hearing into visuals in a way that you communicate the same message, the same narrative. So people with hearing disabilities got a same or a similar experience as people who can hear. Afterwards, these visuals were sent back to the musician and they had to create music on it with the same principle of translation. Of course, the beginning point and the end point was completely different, but there were some very nice experiments that I want to share with you. They're very small. So this was an example between digital artists, electronic music and digital visual art, but it can also be in a more analog way. This is with performance artist Lynn Gerritsen. So you see, it was completely possible to really collaborate together while even not being in the same country or on the same continent during the summer course. A next example that I want to show is also made in lockdown by Jeffa. She's teaching in a special school in London, meaning a school for children with all sorts of disabilities. They were in lockdown, they were lost, and she wanted to connect with her children. This is a piece, children's piece, so the aesthetics are completely different now. But this is a multisensorial piece, so visuals and text and subtitles and easy language and colors and sign language, everything is accorded to each other. So everything has a similar, clear communication. She asked the children as well to get some objects that they would find in their kitchen just to play along. So I will scroll forward a little bit. So sorry to cut it short. You can also find it online on YouTube this time. But here you can see that every aspect or every parameter that she uses is towards the same communication towards her children. Going further, now we get into, for me it was a more difficult process. By May, so we got into lockdown in March, April, and then by May you started seeing all these Zoom orchestras. And by June I was really sick and tired of all these Zoom orchestras. Why? Because people were still doing exactly the same thing as what they would do on a stage with a physical performance. Everyone playing their part, now with a click track instead of a conductor there. But it's this literal translation of something happening in a physical world and then just doing it translated digitally. And so we were looking to find some different approaches to that. This is a piece that is actually being made by different people of CREATIE. It's a composition of Jeffa. She made the visuals. The people co-starring in her video are her roommate and her husband. And then the soundtrack is being made by different researchers from CREATIE, but everyone just in their own home remotely. So we never met. We never could. We talked about it, of course, but we never had these rehearsals. And I find this one of the more appealing pieces that came out of this lockdown in post-production. I'm just gonna skip to a different part so that you also see different visuals. Okay, for time reasons, I'm gonna cut it short, which is very rude. So if you want to see more of it, it's called Octopus by Jeffa Fels, and you can find it on Vimeo. Another experiment, again with Jeffa, but in a different way. So in the first piece, visuals and music were created at the same time. Here, this is a new piece by Jason Eckert for alto flute. I had this lockdown series during the lockdown where I was working with composers remotely on lockdown miniatures. So with some aspects of the lockdown, of the whole pandemic, of everything that was going on, translated into miniature pieces. And we asked Jeffa to make some visuals on top of that. So this is again in post-production, but the visuals are adapted to the music that was being written first. Just a small fragment. And which is nice, what was nice about these collaborations is that we would never have brought these pieces in a similar way if the lockdown didn't happen. So it really helped to think about including other parameters and including other disciplines to actually emphasize that narrative, that emotional and musical narrative that you want to communicate with your audience. Another experiment was again with Marcelo, and this was really a reaction on the Zoom orchestra. So this piece is made for virtual performance. It's impossible that I will play it physically, because it can be played by 3 different people. It is one person who has several voices and several doubts in her or his head. So it really comes from this one performer. So actually it's really only possible with some sort of a post-production in a virtual or digital setting. This was also the first time that I had the chance to play air flute, so I was actually really happy with that. What we tried was to connect with an audience virtually. So another experiment that we did, I'm first going to show the score, was this piece with Anahita Abbasi. And we tried to make a piece that is kind of, doable by all sorts of musicians. It is it's in a contemporary setting, so the notation is more contemporary, but still it is very readable. It's doable by a lot of people, and this was our musical adaptation of those. With New Year's Eve, you sometimes get these messages that are being sent to several people. Well, this was the same thing. So we published this online, and people could just download the score and make their own versions of it. By changing the language, by changing the hashtags, by changing the instruments, so it's not written for flute. It can be played by anyone. We also received some chamber music versions, which was really nice as well. And this was our way to actually stay connected with other performers and to create this Gesamtkunstwerk, but in different voices, in different parts, and from all different parts around the world. I'm gonna show a very short clip. So you can really, this was the stay home, but this might sound very fluty, but actually it can be adapted to a lot of instruments, which was nice because in this way we actually had this community feeling while everyone was staying at home. And this community feeling is something that a lot of people were looking for. How to build a virtual community and how to connect with your audience and how to give your audience a feeling that they're going somewhere, that they can experience something. Because what you saw now were just the plain videos. And when you look them up on Vimeo or YouTube, you still have this quite boring YouTube user interface that we're all tired of right now. So artists were looking for different ways of presenting their artwork and started to think really from this digital aesthetic and from a digital perspective. This is a fashion show by Valentino, and the clothes will never be made physically, and they were not made for human models, but they were made for Animal Crossing. So this was being created very early in the lockdown. It was April or May already. And what I liked is that this whole setting just made sense. The clothes were not adapted from what clothes would be or what a fashion collection would be from the physical world, but it was adapted and thought of for, the perception of this virtual setting, which was Animal Crossing. I visited some other virtual settings as well. This one was from Burning Man in Nevada. And although there were very good elements, so you didn't get this feeling like, okay, this really should have taken place in real life. They were working with more digital artworks. But as you can see here, when it came to performances, it was still very much a screen. But then on the other hand, there was digital artwork that could have never taken place in a physical world, as you can see here. But the live performances, this was from a DJ, it was very funny. But you see, you still have this chat function and then this screen where a DJ is going crazy just in front of his phone. Another lockdown art center is Area for Virtual Art. I really like this one, especially aesthetic-wise. It is being initiated by Martina Menegon from the University of Vienna. And it's very much focused, as you can see. This is a Mozilla Hubs already, but you don't get this reference frame of a physical world. I really like the atmosphere that they're creating here, and all these sculptures are portals to different rooms. And the way it's being done is very nice. The only thing that for us is missing is how to include the performing arts, actually. If you want to go to Area for Virtual Art, I can only highly recommend it. My favorite room was Depart. I'm not going to give a spoiler alert. This is just a picture. Go into that room and experience it yourself. The word has been fallen already, Mozilla Hubs. So in a way to present all these videos, these lockdown miniatures that I made with the composers, we were looking for a more dynamic way to present it to people so that they don't have to stare at the YouTube interface. And the very first experiment was this lockdown lobby in Mozilla Hubs, where every piece is dedicated their own room. And the rooms are designed in that way that it emphasizes visually the narrative of the piece. Originally, it would just be this exposition space where you would go to different rooms to experience the videos, but it became actually a lobby for more digital artwork from people from CREATIE and MaxLab. So with 3D objects, there is a whole GIF gallery. There are different videos and experiments and photos, so it became something more pretty soon, and therefore we really wanted to experiment more. This is the piece of Anahita that I just showed a very short fragment of, the setting. And the nice thing here is you can sit there with your friends, with avatars, and you could talk about it. You can say what you don't like, you can say what you like, you can talk about what you see, you can talk about the experience. And that was really nice, actually. This is the octopus room, also what I showed, the trumpet vine room with the hummingbirds. This is the gift gallery, not moving on an image, of course. But one aspect that we didn't dig into was live performance. So a next experiment was by Studio POC during the Next Doors week at the Conservatoire. And we recreated the Conservatoire in a slightly dystopian way, as you can see. But on the screen there was a live stream, and you could experience what was going on at the Conservatoire while being at the Conservatoire, but in a virtual way. So these staircases and these windows were actually the portal between the physical and the virtual world, because the students of the jazz department were playing here in this hallway in real life, and as an audience you were standing here with your avatar in that same hallway. I'm just gonna scroll through it. There is a short video of it, but I'm not gonna show it. A very last thing that I want to show is our last experiment with this. We recreated a virtual conservatoire and academy for the open house day. And this was also a video, not gonna show it. This was for aspiring students to get some sort of a vibe of both schools before entering. I'm just gonna go through the pictures so that you get an overview of what we created. We also try to experiment with live performances.
Okay. Red River. There is a red river, you know. The water flows.
So this was Philip Meersman, who was doing interventions through an avatar. He also had poetry for 24 hours coming from this statue. And we also experimented with the first, not going to show the video, but the photos, with the first virtual installation where people could enter the Empty Mind project in the empty head of the statue, entering this weird sphere, but this is a 360 video. So when you entered that, you had the whole video surrounding you, while you had the audio also surrounding you while you were just standing in that head. So the audio was not audible in any other part of the room. These rooms are still available, so if you want to visit them, please do so. Okay, I think I made up some time.